Between 50 and 55% of inquiries from ads and organic come in after hours.
Without a penny more spent on marketing, just from nurture sequences, sending out emails, you've essentially just added £12,000 in revenue.
The reception desk, they should be your best salespeople. They should be your best employees.
Just as important in a competitive space that we're in now is the LTV metric.
The average response time, human response time, is during office hours is 8 hours, and it's 14 hours on a weekend. Most patients have disappeared at that point.
Hi, I'm Max, founder and managing director of Vendo Digital. We are a dental marketing agency supporting over 65 locations currently, and I'm here with Adam. Adam, I'll let you introduce yourself.
I'm Adam. I'm one of the co-founders and head of growth at Boxley CRM.
And today we have been spending some time talking through what we can do collaboratively and ultimately what we can improve from both Vendo's side and marketing of the practices that we work with that utilise Boxley, and we ultimately have mutual partners, and understanding what we can do to improve that experience for any of those practices. But ultimately we wanted to talk about what practices aren't doing and where they can really benefit from improving some of their systems, their processes, their nurturing sequence internally, to elevate, ultimately their key metrics within their business and grow their businesses quicker, and how they can improve as a business when they're evidently very good at dentistry, but perhaps the business side of things could do with some tweaking. So do you mind just talking to us about the nurturing sequences and the ACE concept that we were referring to earlier?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking outside, and it's always when you have the best conversations when you're not being filmed. But we were talking about that we implement as an industry, and actually across multiple industries, we implement software and services like yourselves and think that that's the silver bullet that's going to suddenly, everything's going to rocket ship and we're going to make loads of money. But there's so many other things that sit behind that businesses need to do, or they need help doing to get there. You can't just deploy a platform like Boxley and just leave it to do its thing. It needs to be primed with the kind of personality. Same with the marketing. It needs the videos. It needs the personality behind the brand. And what we've been seeing is that one of the biggest challenges that most businesses have, they don't actually know their starting numbers. You talked about KPIs and you talk about uplifts and benchmarking and stuff like that. Without knowing their numbers, it's very, very hard to say, okay, this is doing X, Y, and Z. But what we've recognized is that when a patient comes to a website or an Instagram or Facebook, most practices have the ability to book online, but high majority don't. Not because there's a blocker there, or, even if you offer a deposit, even if you don't, people still tend to inquire because they've got questions to be answered. They want to make sure that the people that they're talking to are real and they're reputable, and they're not just someone that's just popped up a dental practice on the side of the street. So we recognise when an inquiry comes in that the time in which you take to get back to that patient with information they need will increase those chances of conversion.
100%. I think something we've done, and I talked to you through this earlier, a quick example was the kind of key metrics within Boxley that you can see between instant forms, when it comes to meta and when it comes to landing pages. One thing we try and do on landing pages is give as much information as possible. So when you have a consumer that is obviously searching, is looking at a particular practice, where are they based? What's the address? So am I local to them? How many Google reviews do they have? Who is the dentist? And they will hopefully be talking through that appointment explainer video that I mentioned earlier. And that's just a video that will talk through, what is involved in a general dentistry appointment or an implant consultation at that particular practice. And then obviously your case studies as well. But we still see that beyond that point where we've provided all of that information, which you would like to think that perhaps that's everything that a patient would need to see to be convinced to book in online, the majority of them still fill out a form and still wait for someone to get in touch. I think that really, it comes down to the experience that they'll receive beyond filling out that form is the first example of how that practice operates. Is it seamless? Is it high quality? Are they giving me lots of information? And are they not going to leave me silently waiting for 24, 48 hours before they come back to me? I think, it'd be good to, again, talk through those flows and those three different concepts that you put in, but giving that patient those sort of information will 100% see increases in, leads to book consults, and something we want to work towards in terms of getting some benchmarks on and seeing what the difference is that we can create.
Yeah, well, I mean, when someone sees the landing page like you put together, that's great. And if they've got the ability to see it at that point and consume the content, amazing. That gets them to the next point, right? And they can book, but if they don't book, that content that they've just seen is now lost. They'll probably lose that landing page and won't be able to see 100%. It again. So what we've recognised as well is that between 50 and 55% of inquiries from ads and organic come in after hours, so after 5 o'clock and on a weekend. That means that when that inquiry comes in, that patient's now sat there without a human to reply to them or any other additional kind of follow-up messages to them. They just sit there. Likelihood is they're going to get a call the next day at 10 o'clock when they're at work and they're doing something else and they can't. And this is where the motivation of that patient then starts decreasing because they've got other things to spend their money on. They may have had a drink the night before and that's when they inquired and they're then not ready. And this is where then people waste so much time trying to call, trying to get back to them, and potentially you've lost that patient. So we bring a process called the ACE theory into that automation. So as soon as the inquiry comes in, we deploy videos through WhatsApp and email using this ACE process. A is for authority. So again, reinforcing that they're a reputable business. Nice kind of video from the lead clinician or the Invisalign provider or the implantologist, whoever it is, whatever the lead is about, talking through what that process is and showing around the practice. The next one is a bit of comfort that with a patient case study that someone that's had a similar experience before, a similar problem, similar pain, and the kind of results that they've had. It again reinforces that comfort that someone's been through that and they're going to go through that as well. And it's the education. How much does it cost? What's it going to look like at the end? What's the ongoing future potential of this? How long is it going to last? It's all this information, these questions that people have at the point of submitting the inquiry that they don't necessarily see on a landing page or on a website, and we can just nurture them at the point of submission. Now, I'm not saying they're going to convert right there and then and book. 25% do, but at least that when that patient gets a call from your staff or the practice themselves, they've got all that information up front and they're much better prepared or equipped to make a decision when the calls come in.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's interesting you say that. 100% the landing page does get lost. They fill it out once and then they'll never come back to it. They'll go back to the original website and you may not necessarily see the right video, the right content, the right testimonials. And we operate off something very, very similar in terms of theory, which is KLT, know, like, trust. And really it's a sales theory as such. But we know that if the potential patient or prospect patient knows you, likes you, and then trusts you due to the social proof that you would see in that sort of content that you are following up with and that we have put in the landing page, but the vast majority of them will only digest 35% of the landing page, so may not even get to the testimonials, may not even necessarily get to the pricing. It just means that you are making the associate or the principal's life easier so that by the time that potential patient is in the chair, they've seen exactly what the appointment or the consultation is going to include. They know what experience they're about to go through. They've seen the inside of the practice, so they're familiar. Nice. This is something that I think is super, super important because how many times you walked in, you go through a solid door and you have no idea where you're going into and you just don't feel quite as comfortable as you would in a familiar surrounding, right? So if you then see, B-roll on the landing page or B-roll within the video that you're sending in that nurture sequence of that practice, you're like, yep, I know I'm in the right place. I know exactly when I open the door what it's going to look like in front of me because I've seen the walkthrough. And then also, you then start trusting and liking the dentist because you have dentist-led content that talks you through what the benefits of that particular treatment, whether it's implants, smile makeovers, general dentistry, or obviously continued dentistry. But then the testimonials is that final piece. So it's depending on what order you deliver the sequences is, you follow both principles.
And you do. I mean, and the beauty of this is that this is part of what you do for every client, and feeding that in from every touch point that patient sees, it just reinforces that. There's this weird concept, isn't there, about visualization? Not that anyone's visualized themselves sitting in a dentistry, but when you're looking to get something or buy something, you do need to see yourself doing that. everyone visualises themselves, especially if you're spending a lot of money.
Yeah.
You try to visualize yourself doing that, and if they can't do that, then people find it harder to buy and transact.
100%. We've got, this is a little snippet that I shouldn't really give away, but one of our best performing ads for nervous patients is a Meta glasses ad.
Cool, right.
So we have a practice where a patient goes in and walks through what the process is and what the experience is like as a nervous patient.
Nice.
So that you can see it from the eyes, you get offered a cup of tea, you get taken into a non-clinical setting for that conversation. It's one of the highest converters. So hopefully that doesn't now go and get copied in every other area that we work in.
I've got a pair of Meta glasses. I've been wondering what I can use them for. So there we go.
There it is. Fake patients had to be added into your nurture sequences. So what are you seeing beyond this point? Because I think we've spent a lot of time today collaborating and going, what can we improve? Because we share a lot of mutual clients, which is fantastic. And I know we can elevate what we're doing together. I think that today has identified that there could be so much more that we can do together, which is great. And I think a lot of people aren't doing those things. What do you think are the most common, simplistic things that practice owners can start implementing from things like Boxley that at the moment you're just not seeing it?
Well, I mean, obviously I'd want people to use Boxley, but it's not just about using software. There's no point having a software like Boxley unless you haven't got the foundations built in before that. You need staff. You need people behind the scenes to be able to use software like this. You need them to be able to be, your reception desk. They should be your best salespeople. They should be your best employees. They're the first people someone will speak to, and they're the last person they'll speak to when they leave the room or leave the practice. And they should be upselling them, they should be welcoming them, they should be making them want to come back. So, a software like Boxley, or even marketing, you could drive loads and loads of leads at a practice, and they come in, if they don't continue to spend money, not just off that first appointment, but continue to come in and want to come in, then there's no point spending all that kind of money. You need the foundations in. We see so many kind of leakages within that patient journey, whether it's hitting the website or the landing page after the first inquiry, but we've seen in Boxley, we're trying to benchmark a lot of this data. Mm-hmm. The average response time, human response time, is during office hours is 8 hours, and it's 14 hours on a weekend. Most patients have disappeared at that point. Mm. The other thing is that most practices will only follow up 1, 2, or 3 times. You take something like implants, of spending between £5,000 and £15,000 on implant or multiple implants. You can't just make that decision in 10 or 15 days. That can go on for months. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't got sequences that are built in to keep in, automation isn't about converting the patient, it's about keeping you front and center of mind when they've got a new job, or they've been paid, or a life event has happened which gives them the ability to go and spend that money. It's about making sure that these stages of the patient journey are filled. Yeah, essentially.
There's a few very good points there, and a few things I want to come back on. That's actually interesting you say about implants and the longevity of the decision making. As you know, we support a lot of squat practices.
Yeah.
And one of the things we do advise is because there's a lot of them that say, let's start with implants. It takes on average around 90 days from lead to treatment go ahead. Mm-hmm. So the day the person inquires to the day they agree to go ahead with the treatment plan for implants, which is such a long sales cycle. So when it comes to squats, we advise to actually not start with implants, because great when they come in for cash flow, right, in terms of the business and the revenue that's going to drive, but can you survive investing 3 months, because that's what it is really, 90 days without seeing a penny before you then allow that snowball to start building and then start coming in. So building general and emergency inquiries in that initial stage is always so much better for them, even though it's not high value treatment necessarily, but because of that sales cycle. And I think so many people lose out because they don't nurture people throughout that sequence. The difference you can make, if you simple maths, right? If you have 10 leads and 2 of them go ahead for implants, but of the other 8 you start nurturing them where you weren't before, and just 1 of them goes ahead, if that's a single tooth and it's £3,000, just some very, very simple nurture sequences can be the difference between converting 3, potentially 4, as opposed to 2, which revenue wise and from a marketer's perspective, ROI wise, makes life so much easier to justify, because you have the right foundations in place to then get the best results for those clients. And I think too many people try and scale too quickly without those foundations, and actually don't spend enough time on building the foundations properly. I think there's also, to a degree, like you mentioned earlier, there is this sense of expectation where even though it's their business, they will expect someone to come in and go, oh, map this all out for me.
Yeah.
You know, it is the practice owner's business, and ultimately, really, it's about how do they want that patient to be treated and what experience they want that patient to go through as they inquire. And that is a vision that needs to be portrayed, in my mind, from a practice owner, because every practice is to some degree different.
Yeah. The number of conversations you kind of go off on off tangents, but you're right that focusing on an implant as an example, you mentioned, right, use that example, you've got 10 leads, 2 of them go ahead. Of those 8, what tends to happen if they don't convert is the practice will go, forget about them. They'll either not nurture them or they'll just put them into a loss column and never. Now, what we think you should be doing is like, phone that patient. Have they gone ahead with an implant elsewhere? If they have, okay, that's fine. They are lost. If they haven't gone ahead with an implant, they're not lost. Mm-hmm. They just haven't made a decision. And this is where it's not even just about long-term nurture sequences. This is about reactivating patients, not just lost leads or cold leads. It's patients that have come through the chair for other treatments like an extraction or something like that, and upselling an opportunity, because people much rather come back to a practice they trust and have been to, but the chances are is they have an emotional transaction where they see something online and go, yeah, I need an implant, or I'd love to get my teeth straightened, and they won't think, oh yeah, I've got a dentist that I could go back to. They don't. They'll look at that ad and they'll go, that looks cool. Click on that ad, and that patient that other practice they had, they've just lost them. And there's this kind of, it's frustrating because you see it all the time. We see it all happening all the time, and we see our customers going, we've lost a patient. They've gone elsewhere. Why has that happened? And they're focusing on new leads, new patients, which is great, but they're not focusing on the stuff they got.
100%. I think I say this from the likes of a meta ad perspective. You know, I asked a question off the back of a talk on the weekend. Do you exclude your existing patients? And the answer is no, because you want your general dentistry patients to be aware that you do your high value treatments, that you offer the smile makeovers, that you offer the Invisalign, that you offer the implants. And there's so many people who say, oh, I'm doing loads of general dentistry, but no high value. There is 100% high value in your existing patients. Have you sent them a newsletter? Have you sent them an email through Boxley to basically say, hey, we're doing an offer at the moment, or this is what an Invisalign appointment looks like. We can do you a 3D smile simulation or a liner simulation, which is ultimately going to allow people to go, oh, hey, they're not really trying to push it too much, but actually they do offer that. And I have been considering it, and I was going to go down the road to someone who's been aggressively advertising aligners. Yeah. I was just going there for my general dentistry. And that is such a common conversation, I would say. There's one other point that in the first piece that you mentioned that I want to just draw it back to very slightly, and that's the LTV metrics.
Yeah.
From a marketer's perspective, I believe that 2 of the key metrics that a business owner should at least understand is your cost of acquiring a patient and the lifetime value of a patient. And I think, when it comes to acquiring costs, you want to work with a marketing partner, whether that's internal marketing, whether that is an agency, where you are focusing on that metric and doing what you can to reduce the cost of your acquisition, or at least find an acquisition number that you're happy with and then scale it up. Yeah. But simultaneously, and just as important in a competitive space that we're in now, is the LTV metric. Because if you have a practice that has an LTV, so an average lifetime value of a patient is £500 versus a practice that is £1,000, the practice that has £1,000 in lifetime value per patient can afford to spend so much more on their marketing because of the gap and the margin that's in place. Yeah. What do you feel are some of the sort of maybe 2 or 3 key things that people can implement within Boxley to increase lifetime value?
I talk about this all the time, and I'm going to give some random analogies, but the dental industry is so far behind other industries when it comes to this. You look at anywhere else, you look at hospitality, you look at kind of supermarkets and stuff like that. Like you mentioned about being a general dentist, you coming in for your hygiene appointments and then going elsewhere for Invisalign because you don't know they offer it. Why do we get emails constantly bombarded by the likes of Aldi or Tesco, wherever you shop at? And they've got this middle aisle that offers robot vacuums and all this other stuff. And it piques your interest because people will go and they'll buy from it. It's the same with hospitality. So like a restaurant chain, if they go and offer pancakes as a breakfast, you don't know they do that unless they actually email you and tell you they've got this offer on for Father's Day or whatever it is. It's this ability to market to your own database that allows you to increase that lifetime value. Because you're right, because if you don't get that lifetime value up, you're trying to outspend or out-earn the spend that you're doing through marketing. That's really difficult if you're only looking at the new patient acquisition and not the other patients. With Boxy or any system is, you've got your emailer platforms out there. I mean, realistically, it's much better when they're integrated into your PMS and into your ads, and so you know who's actually a patient, who's not. But just being able to segment your data is the right thing. We use the example about an implant. Anyone that's had an extraction in the last 3 years that's over the age of 50, push them out an email about an implant. If they're under, then it should be WhatsApp. Segment your database based on the age, demographic, and all that type of stuff. But utilize your patient database in the right way. Same if you run an ad. We said this a bit before about the lead source. If you get an ad from Open Day, or if you get run an ad for new patients or whitening, look at the conversion you got off those, and the ones that didn't convert, you can target them again. If they've opted in for marketing, that's really important, having a CRM that tracks that. But if they've opted in for marketing, target them for something else, get the revenue out of them. And you can keep doing this with all your patients.
100%. I think there's two things that are hugely neglected on that realm, and it's you pay for all these leads and you assume because they don't go ahead on the first phone call, or you assume because after reaching out 3 or 4 times they're not going ahead. We do actually encourage practices to reach out, obviously nurture sequences in place, but reach out 6 to 7 times, because like you say, most of the time they'll inquire in that sort of 5 to 9 period after work, when they finish their work and it's convenient time but the practice is closing, or you don't get to it late in the day.
Yeah.
It's the same when it comes to answering the phone. So when you come in at 9 a.m. the next morning, they also just started their job, in all likelihood, at 9 a.m. the next morning. So the fact they don't answer is a convenience thing, right? And yeah, okay, you might leave a voicemail and they haven't called back because, again, they're busy professionals. But try 6 or 7 times over a couple of days, over a week, but at different times. And if you can get a call in on Saturday morning, the chances are that you'll get them whilst they aren't as busy, or they are able to answer the phone. But I think the 2 things we see that are so common is, one, if you just go into a practice's PMS and you look at their active patients versus their inactive patients, there are so many, and the percentage of inactive patients is something like 60% on average. It's just ludicrous. And when I say inactive, I'm talking haven't been in for the last 12 months, right?
Yeah.
So that means that they're not coming in for their regular hygiene appointments, and ultimately there should be something in place to reactivate them. And if you've got something like Boxley that is talking to your PMSs and has the ability to segment those audiences, it means you can target those people and say, hey, we really miss you. You haven't been in for 7 months. You're overdue on that hygiene. Let's get you in as soon as we can. Super informal, super easy message. You can send it on both WhatsApp and email. If they're at work, they're probably on their emails. If it's later in the day, they might pick up that WhatsApp as a quick example. But then the other one is, for whatever reason, so many practices just neglect the leads that don't go ahead straight away. But the reality is, at some point, they were interested in something that you offered.
Yep.
They may not be the right patient for you. They may not be your ideal customer profile as such. But ultimately, if you can go and take a list of 2,000 leads that you've had over the last 12 months, and you can go and get 10 of those to go ahead, and you know your lifetime value is £1,000, without a penny more spent on marketing, just from nurture sequences, sending out emails, you've essentially just added £12,000 in revenue. And it's so simplistic. We're talking 0.05% uptake of that
Sounds
base.
ridiculous, isn't it?
It's ludicrous. And it does happen. They need it. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, everyone needs oral healthcare. So there is something that will be of interest, and it's just how do you get those people across the line. So the bigger you can build that database, 100%, the more you should be nurturing, but have those foundations in place. I do feel personally, having seen what we've seen today, every practice should probably be sending out a bi-weekly, fortnightly newsletter to just say, hey, this is the latest story we've got.
Yeah.
This person's just had an implant. See how they've transformed their life. Here's the video.
Exactly. It's not also about, it's not, you don't have to make money there and then on one campaign. This is about keeping people involved, but you also don't need a platform. Look, I want to say I'd love to say everyone has to use Boxly, but you don't. You can do all this manually. You can extract data from your PMS about your last visit date, and you can put it into a mailer platform and send it out, and it won't cost you a ton of money. There's going to be some manual intervention that you need to do, and drag and drop and stuff like that through an Excel spreadsheet. It's fine, but this is your patient data. You've got the ability to do this. Now you can go from doing it manually to a platform like ours, where you can drip feed this. So if you're going to send a newsletter out and and it says about an implant, and someone clicks that link, then Boxly then knows that they're interested in implants and can put them on a campaign. So you can go fully automated with this. You don't have to. This is just using your own data, but just using it a bit more cleverly.
Yeah, definitely. I think that ties into, again, what we were talking about earlier, the aggregation of data.
Yeah.
And you can do things manually. You can do everything manually. You don't have to use a CRM system, but ultimately, how much time are you going to spend having the data aggregated on a Google Sheet, put into a pivot table to give you the information to make decisions and to segment your audiences manually, right, from your PMS, and then to go and upload that into Klaviyo or MailChimp, and then ultimately send out that email. When you've got it there and then, it's going to take you a couple of minutes to send out an email versus going and actually spending all that time doing executional tasks that software and AI can now do for you. And that's ultimately, I guess, the value add that Boxly can bring, is it's an aggregation of all of that information, all of that data, so that, at the touch of a couple of buttons, you've ultimately got the ability to access all of those patients, and specific ones too, so you can deliver and convey the right messaging to the right people. Which I think makes a humongous difference.
It does. I kind of go back to literally my first point was that if you don't know what you're doing right now, then you implement something like Boxly, you're going from zero to doing that. You don't actually, it's like you say, it's very difficult to quantify time saved, because that staff member, whether they're doing this manually or they're doing something else, they're still on the payroll. It's about where that spend of that wage is actually going. We always say that if a receptionist is picking up the phone call and handling rescheduling conversations and mundane questions about pricing, finance, NHS availability, taking that off them and giving them quality leads to handle and convert, then you're going to see a return on investment. It's really hard to then whittle that down to an actual ROI though. That's the biggest challenge. But you're right, if when you're doing these things manually, if you can get something to do it automatically, you're going to see a much better return, but there's less chance of errors and failures as well.
I think that comes back to, because those measurements are quite difficult, and it's probably the final piece to talk about. I know you're wary of time here a little bit. Benchmarks, right? Mm-hmm. Because something we're looking at, and as a very quick example that we ran through before, you've got your cost per lead benchmarks from a marketing perspective, you've got your cost per book consult benchmarks, which gives you not only the benchmark of how much a book consult costs, but also percentage ratios of lead to book consults.
Yep.
Then you've got your benchmarks to cost per treatment acceptance or go ahead, so a one treatment, which then shows you essentially what you or your associates' treatment plan acceptance rate is, right? So you can see from book consult to treatment acceptance, what that percentage is. We want to, and what we're utilizing AI for now is heavily on the benchmarking side, right?
Yeah.
How can we say to any of the practices that we work with, hey, the leads, we're seeing them perform over the benchmarks that we're seeing across the range of practices that we work with, and we, likewise with yourself, are in the luxury of having the data, which we can aggregate from multiple practices to give you those benchmarks. But this is what highlights across when it comes to comparing that practice data with your benchmarks, so that ultimately this is what to focus on.
Yeah.
Are you doing anything, or do you have any future plans around benchmarking or anything you want to see? Because I know we talked about uplift that we can see when we put in nurturing sequences, and I'm sure that's something we'll work on together. Yep. But is there what are Boxly doing at the moment when it comes to benchmarking?
It's a great point. We are looking at benchmarking. We've got an incredible database of stats across the industry in terms of lots of practices. So we are looking to benchmark. So again, when someone looks at an ROI and looks at Boxly, we show everything that's going on in the practice. We don't necessarily showing what's going on as their business, and compared. So the benchmarking point is that it's not just about showing what they're benchmarking against cost per lead, which is really useful, and cost per acquisition, etc. It's also going down to the granular information about each practitioner. What's their conversion against the benchmark? What's the staff members at each point of the journey? So we are doing this. It's really difficult, but again, AI is helping us. But people need to see where they are. I mean, whether we like it or not, there's some ego
100%.
going on, and everyone wants to know they're doing better than the guys down the road. So yeah, it's something that we're looking to build into the platform very, very soon, and it only helps when you've got the data from yourselves, especially phone calls, because if you haven't got your phone calls coming in, then you've got half the data.
Without a doubt. Yeah, I think that's ultimately what I think we want to work with yourselves and provide to the practice, is just to be able to have visibility on that data. And I think with AI now, and I think to summarise it, you just essentially have to use it with data. If you do not have the data in the first place aggregated correctly, you don't have it populated correctly, it's very difficult to use AI fully, apart from prompting and asking basic questions, as I think the vast majority hopefully of the world is doing. But we certainly want to get that data centralized, make sure it's accurate 100% of the time, and then that executional analysis task is now being taken away, where you've got the right data so that you can actually utilize what it's spitting out in terms of advice and showing, hey, this associate here is, when this particular associate is seeing book consults, we're seeing that the treatment acceptance plan is below the benchmark. So that can give you some real indicators as a business owner. Hey, where should I prioritize my time?
Yeah.
And
you're spot on.
As a busy business owner, I'm sure you can relate to this. I know we've spoken about it briefly. It just becomes, there's too much to do in a day, right? So it just becomes about, how do I prioritize my time? What should I work on to move the needle the most?
That's where AI is just is brilliant. And how many times have you used AI to write an email and gone, don't like that,
Mm-hmm.
and you changed it? AI shouldn't be put in front of your patients. It shouldn't be we feel is that it shouldn't be communicating with your patients. Automation's there with your content, yes, but effectively the human should have a conversation with the human. That won't disappear for a long, long time. And people are trying to skip that step. They're trying to throw AI at that problem.
Yeah.
The problem, that's a symptom. It's just a symptom of the bigger problem. The big problem is that your team are too busy doing the mundane stuff to be able to have that conversation. Let AI do that. Let AI make data-driven decisions, so you know where you are on your benchmarking. You know what's working, what's not, what practitioner's not working, what salesperson or receptionist isn't performing, what phone calls aren't being handled the right way. That's where AI is brilliant, is analysing information correctly to make decisions better, not to communicate with the patients.
100%. And I think this is the final piece. I know you do need to go, but
I could talk for hours.
Oh no, I think we have to allow for a longer slot next time. But I think when it comes to the noise of AI, and I think what will ultimately win is authenticity, which comes down to things like, I know it's so simple, but your video content and getting that out as an automated follow-up from as soon as someone's inquired, because anyone can go and produce, AI ads these days. There are so many AI ads that we're starting to see. There are so many basic AI emails. I don't want to feel like I've just had a response from ChatGPT. I can go and speak to ChatGPT myself.
Yeah.
We want to make sure there's that human element in there, but use AI to execute the efficiencies around it. And I think that's what it becomes about. And the more people use AI incorrectly in that way, the more authenticity, video content and things like that will 100% win, because it's how to differentiate you, and specifically in this case a practice, because they'll feel like they know, like and trust you, and that's why they'll go to that practice as opposed to any of the competitors in the same town or down the road.
Agreed. I prefer KLT to ACE, actually. I might swap that.
Yeah.
Can I nick that off you?
All yours. It's very well known. But yeah, thank you very much. We'll cut that there, because I know you are short on a little bit of time, but we will set up a longer conversation so we can cut our teeth on a bit more next time. But thank you very much,
Sounds
Adam.
good, mate.
And
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.